Well, good morning. It's 11 o'clock and let's get started. My name is Jan Schmitz. I'm from the Edmonton Pride Seniors Group. It's May the 4th, and thank you all for attending our weekly Aging with Pride discussion group for the 2S LGBTQ2IA seniors and their allies. And thank you to our partners, SAGE and the Pride Center of Edmonton. Before I introduce our speaker, I must acknowledge that we are located on Treaty 6 territory and respect the histories, languages, and cultures of First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and all First Peoples of Canada, whose presence continues to enrich our lives. I must let you know that this session is being recorded for future use on our YouTube channel. If you don't wish your image to be recorded, please close your video feed. And now, with great pleasure, I would like to introduce our speaker. Dusko Trivic, originally from Croatia and living in Canada for almost 30 years, he's a family service counselor at Memories Funeral Home, specializing in funeral pre-planning, and aftercare. Dusko joined the funeral profession after experiencing a deep personal loss and has dedicated his life to providing general public with accurate information on funeral arrangements. Over to you, Dusko.
Thank you very much. It's almost like I wrote that. It's all true. I didn't embellish. So thank you very much, everyone, for participating, and thank you for inviting me to share these little bits of wisdom, if you will. The personal loss that I experienced, and I will share that with you guys, is the fact that I lost my wife 6 years ago. She and her loss and what she did for me before she passed prompted me to actually join this profession and started sharing the true meaning of pre-planning and all the information possible, because I found out that there is not a lot of information available. It is a business, so the funeral homes are trying to kind of get you guys to come in and spend money and all that kind of stuff. I don't believe in that. My intentions are pure, and I sincerely want to share that info with you. If you choose to do so, I'm more than welcome to make those arrangements as well. So with that being said, I'm going to share a little presentation with you guys. It's about 15-20 slides. I'll talk about each one of them. Feel free to interrupt if you want to ask any questions now, but we will have a short session after where you can actually ask questions and get some answers. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Bear with me. There we go. So this is a part 2 of part 3 series seminars that I'm doing all over the city. This one would be how to pre-plan a funeral. People generally will do pre-arrangements for 2 different reasons. One reason would be emotional, so that your family, your loved ones, your children, your spouse don't have to worry about that when the time comes. Very important, because you are going to be in a very emotional state, and unfortunately some people that don't have high ethics can take advantage of you. The other part would be a financial reason. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this or not, but once you sign a contract with the funeral home, the pricing is frozen in time, so it doesn't matter how long you live after that. Can be 10 years, 15 years, X amount of years. The prices are never going to change. So that is the importance of pre-planning, because you can kind of I don't know about you, but I'd much rather leave $10,000 to my grandkids than to a funeral home that's going to spend it on my wages. So that being said, there is over 90 questions that need to be answered by your executor once a person passes. Those questions range from Stats Canada questions like, you know, where was the deceased person born? Where is the what were their parents' names? Where were the parents born? So a little bit of stats, and then you have to answer questions like, what does the family prefer? Do you want cremation or burial? Do you want service of remembrance? Do you want, you know, that kind of stuff? What kind of flowers do you need? Do you need music? What kind of, you know, there is million questions that actually need to be answered, and usually if the pre-planning is not taken care of, then the arrangements can last up to 3 or 4 hours, which is exhausting for family and for everybody else. This is a little bit of I'm kind of touching as I go, but when I say the word funeral, what comes to your guys' mind? And feel free to either share. I'm assuming you can answer questions on via chat, things like that. Funerals in these days are definitely changing. They're changing a lot. Even as we speak, there's new methods of disposing of the deceased person popping up. I'll touch base on some of those a little bit after. But the funerals are not necessarily the way my grandparents used to have them. My tradition in Croatia is that the burial happens 2 days after the passing. There is no huge big mass. There's nothing like that. Priest comes to the cemetery and does the traditional Roman Catholic service, because Croatia is 97% Catholic, and that's about it. Here, there's lots of different things. I'm sure each of you have different views and values, and are probably different denominations as well. So everything is changing. But what we're trying to what most of the families are asking us these days, they're asking us for creating something memorable, something that's not going to just be because the traditions allow us to do so. They want something special. So we will try to moderate and make that service happen based on your wishes. So we'll bring a motorcycle inside if a person was riding a motorcycle. We were bringing a tractor. The tractor was sitting in our yard because the gentleman that passed was a farmer and he really enjoyed his farming equipment and things like that. So it's not all somber prayers in the church and all that kind of stuff. We try to develop things a little bit differently. Services are also, and this comes from a personal experience as well, they are more designed to take care of families' needs and friends' needs, because people want to have that opportunity to actually get together and celebrate the life of that person that passed away. Of course, there's going to be sad moments and all that kind of stuff is normal. Nobody can tell you you have to do it this way or you have to do it that way. But unless you have some sort of a send-off, if you will, very often families experience the emptiness after that, because they don't feel that they feel that something is missing. So think about the funeral in the same way you would treat a wedding. You're supposed to create a memorable experience, and that's what we're striving to do. I see we have some funeral means a gathering, celebration of life, remembrance. There you go. Yeah, thank you very much, Joanne and Larry, for sharing that with us. Oops, there we go. So you touched on that, and this is what we're kind of experiencing here. So you gathering support from the friends and family, helping survivors get that closure, allows expression of a whole bunch of emotions and feelings. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create a very memorable experience. Now, service options can be divided in four ways, if you will. So you have your traditional funerals. You can have a graveside service, which means that the family and friends will just gather at the gravesite, and there's going to be somebody who's going to say a few words, and we lower the casket. Very minimalistic. Memorial service, which you can have either before or after the burial or cremation, and then is what we call a direct cremation or direct burial. So direct cremation would be just somebody calling us saying, so and so has passed away. We don't want any service. We don't need any of that stuff. Mom, dad was very private person. There's not too many friends left. We're just going to do a cremation for the family, and that's it. Obviously, there is many cemetery options. Mausoleums are fairly popular. Traditional ground burials are popular. We are actually experiencing a little bit of a surge in so-called green burials. That's a fairly new thing to Edmonton and Alberta. So far, there's only few cemeteries here in the city that do that. They generally speaking, the options are so far limited as of now, but there's no marking at the grave of any kind. Family only receives a GPS coordinates, and you're not allowed to put any permanent markers in there, things like that. So it's a little bit different from what we're used to, right? Obviously, there is it is such a how can I say, you can get a lot of different merchandise. Urns and keepsakes are popular. For those of you who don't know that or haven't maybe experienced that, you are not obligated to purchase an urn. Whoever tells you that you must, they're not being honest with you. When we released the ashes home with the family, we actually put them in a heavy-duty plastic bag that's sealed, and then that's placed in a plastic and cardboard container. So it's very well protected. You don't need something like that. Obviously, those are personal choices. You can actually, I had a family ask me if we can bring a Tim Hortons coffee can, because whoever was passing, they were really loving Tim Hortons coffee, and that's where they wanted the ashes stored in. So there's no rules, right? There's no laws about that kind of stuff. Again, a couple of more slides about that. There is cremation options as far as the keepsakes go. The little orb that's on the left side of the screen there, that's actually made with ashes. Each person's DNA, if you will create different colors of that. So some people choose to do that. You can even create a diamond out of that. Yeah, very extremely expensive, but like it's a novelty thing, I guess. Vast majority of these keepsakes has like a little place inside them where we can actually store a little portion of the cremated remains. A lot of families actually do that for sentimental reasons, obviously. With cremations, you can also have different kinds of ground burial or placements in the niches. So you can see a little round hole in the ground, which would kind of be the traditional ground burial for the urn. You can have a display on the right-hand side that is a little bit different. You can actually put cremated remains in benches and boulders. The options are limitless, really. Here we have some different versions of columbariums that are all over the cemeteries. And here you can see some cremation boulders and benches and things like that. Ossuary is a little bit a different thing. If you're not aware of that, pretty much every cemetery will have an ossuary where they can the cremated remains can be scattered with many members of the community. So that's another kind of, you don't really have to spend a lot of money, and your loved one can still be in a safe and secure place. This is now a little bit newer things that are happening in the last little while. Underwater reefs, your cremated remains can be placed in a block of cement, for lack of better explanation, and it's placed in certain locations throughout Canada and US, and it becomes a part of the artificial reef. So your remains or your loved one's remains are helping create new environment for fish to thrive another life, right? You can choose to have your ashes scattered in the space, or put in with the arrangement that I just did a couple of weeks ago. The couple is going to put their ashes in fireworks. So when they pass away, they'll have a gathering of family and friends somewhere safe, and hopefully with no fire ban. And they'll have fireworks with. I mean, how much more memorable can that be, right? You can be scattered at sea, you can be scattered in flight, different things. Now, a couple of I don't know what next slide is. Okay, so we're just going to go. Two new things that just recently were brought to my attention were aquafation, which is a liquid way of cremating the body, which is going to be environmentally friendlier than actually cremation chambers that we use. And the other thing that was just started in US is composting. You donate your body, if you will, or you choose that option to be composted, and natural process takes place in a very secure facility. Your loved ones gets a 50-pound bag of mulch that has your remains in it, and you can then scatter it in your garden or do different wonderful things with that, but definitely different. 20, 30, 40 years from now, who knows what's going to be new and in this industry. We're definitely growing. So this is a little bit, I touched on that, like we're trying to create a different celebration of life. I mentioned motorcycles, horse-drawn carriage, Dava balloon release, things of that nature, right? Now, this would kind of sort of be key factors for people to consider when they're planning a service. What kind of service do you like? There's going to be obituary costs associated with that. Pretty much every funeral home will post an obituary on their own website for free. The obituary that we're talking about here would be in the newspaper, and those range anywhere from $500 to $1,500. Kind of. It depends on whether you want to put colored pictures. It's based on a number of the words. So my recommendation is always to, if you want to have an obituary in the paper, just do a basic bulletin point, like very short, so you don't end up paying too much. And then you can write somebody's life story on our website, and people can come in and read it there. Type of caskets, outer barrier containers are going to be also a major factor in that cost consideration. Other burial containers are some cemeteries have a bylaw that you actually have to use it. So if you participated in any kind of burials, I'm sure you've seen either the cement boxes or more elaborate boxes there. The casket is then placed inside, and then that's buried. So those can get fairly expensive. I think the most expensive one that we have is over $20,000 for that outer barrier container. and it's supposed to be hermetically sealed and guaranteed for over 100 years that nothing is going to penetrate that. I'm not sure personally, as a Catholic, I want to be able to exit my burial ground once the good Lord comes back. But if it's hermetically sealed, I'm not sure how that would be possible. A little bit of joke. I hope you guys don't mind. Other things that you need to think about would be the flowers, cemetery space and marker, stuff like that. Everything is going to cost money, unfortunately. Vehicle, meaning if you want a funeral home to provide a family with a limo to take them to the service and the cemetery. And then honorariums. Honorariums are something that is very often overlooked because we need to pay for either the priest or a celebrant, musicians, if there are going to be some people like to have bagpipers to play at their service, things like that. So those would be kind of the factors that would determine how expensive the funerals or cremations can get. And these are some of the examples of prices. Urns and caskets. This is kind of the medium price that you're looking for. Urns will start at $195 and they go all the way up to $5,000, for example. And caskets, you can get a decent casket for around $1,800 or $1,900. And again, the price just goes. If somebody wants a solid mahogany casket, you're looking at like $20,000 for that as well. So it's not cheap, unfortunately. Now we're going, this is something that when I was training for this profession, we were told that the prices basically double every 8 to 10 years. And me being inquisitive, I didn't want to take just their word for as a law. So I went and did a lot of checking. Obviously, the contracts here are redacted, so you can't see any names and things like that. But this is just to show you a little bit of a comparison. So no service option would be just a basic cremation, right? In 1991, the price was $942 with our company. And now in 2021, you're looking at about $3,800. So the price does change. This would be for a kind of mid-range memorial service. Again, 2021, $1,700, 2021, $6,304. And I'm sorry to say, but even since 2021, our prices went up, unfortunately. So that's kind of the unfortunate trend, especially with urns and caskets. Anything that's manufactured, especially these times, people are missing the materials and things like that, and drives the cost up, right? And this would be for a traditional burial. In 1995, you're looking at $3,800 with the casket and everything else that you needed for that service. These days, with the same casket that I picked, it came out to $8,730. So as you can see, the prices definitely are changing. So pre-planning and locking in the pricing definitely helps, because you're like, again, I would much rather give that money to my grandkids or donate it to a favorite charity of yours than spend it on this. So this would be the pre-planning advantages. I've been chatting about that since we started. Important thing would be a peace of mind. Your family is protected. There's not going to be anybody taking advantage of them. Your wishes are going to be respected. So if you tell your family, I don't want a video tribute because various reasons, I don't want service because if people were not visiting me when I was alive, I don't need to see, those would be the options. Everything is going to be done your way. So even if you don't prepay with the funeral home, share that information with your family, because that's going to help them immensely. Okay. This is a little bit about Dignity Memorial, which is my parent company. Dignity Memorial is North America's largest funeral services provider. We have over 2,500 locations throughout North America, 6 in Edmonton area. So besides Memories, there is also Hainstocks on the south side. And then we have locations in Leduc, Stony Plain, Fort Saskatchewan, and Barhead. So we're covering kind of broader Edmonton area. And this would be just a little bit about the Dignity difference. We have a couple of different very nice options that I think show that we actually help families all the time, not just with the service. Compassion Helpline is one that I'm very proud of, because it's basically grief counseling, and it's a grief counseling that we offer to family completely free of charge. It is available for 13 months after someone's passing, and it's available to even friends, co-workers, neighbors. Anybody can use it. I personally used it at 3 in the morning when I would wake up and all of a sudden my wife is not there anymore. Chances are you're gonna be like me. You're not gonna call your kids at 3 in the morning and say, "Hey, guess what? I miss your mom." So it works, and we get a lot of great feedback from the people thanking us for that service. The other one that's a little bit different is children and grandchildren protection. If you sign a contract with Dignity Memorial, and God forbid something happens to your children or grandchildren until the age of 21, we will provide the family with the exact same service you chose for yourself, completely free. That means that you're not losing your arrangements. We're just extending our helping hand and giving you that for free, because we know how devastating that would be to you guys. So I think that even though we're a huge, big corporation, that shows that we care about the families. We have an honor of helping out. National transferability just means that because we have so many locations, if you choose to pre-plan with us and move, you can move where your kids live, you can move for work. If you're a younger person, your arrangement travels with you, and our locations will honor the pricing 100%. So there is no, oh my goodness, I want to do this, but I might be moving to Arizona to retire there eventually. You're not losing anything, right? Everything kind of travels with you. Personal Planning Guide is the book that I'm going to try to arrange for all of you guys to receive. We're going to talk about that after. Personal Planning Guide is a book that can help you organize all your affairs and have them all in one place. There is a lot of information that you can write in there as far as the vital statistics for yourself or your family. There is pages in there that you can put your service preferences. You can let the family know who to contact. Maybe you have a friend that lives far away that they might not know, things like that. So this book is designed to help you with all that stuff. I had actually chatted with somebody before, and they they were a little bit devastated because they did not know that parents have pre-planned, because they never shared with them. So when mom finally passed away, she pre-planned with us, but they went to a local funeral home in Sherwood Park and purchased the whole thing because it was closer to them. Once they started going through the paperwork, they found the pre-plan with Memories, and obviously we refunded them the money and things like that, but it kind of defeated the purpose of pre-planning, right? So this book will help you with that. It'll help you start that conversation, if you will. Okay. Um, we have reached the end, and I am more than happy to stop sharing now and listen to you guys' questions if you have any. Oh, there we go. I think I saw a question. There we go. There was something in the chat. Shelter. What does shelter involve? That is a very good question.
Would it be,
Joanne?
would it be a cover in case of rain?
Yes, something like that. Yes. And Joanne said that
My
she would
sister-in-law,
appreciate.
yeah, my sister-in-law's burial was had a snafu because it rained during the night, and the next morning her gravesite was filled with water.
Oh,
And they just had an oversight. They just didn't cover up
yeah.
the area and prepare. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the Mother Nature does play tricks with us. When I was working for a different funeral home, I was always, not just me, every one of us was dreading going to certain cemeteries, because when the snow starts melting, you can be in water up to your knees in there, and it's depending where the how the ground slopes and all that stuff. So yeah, stuff happens sometimes, right?
We
But-
blamed our sister. We blamed my sister-in-law because she was always difficult. That was her last parting gesture.
There you go. Yeah, that's a nice, healthy way of looking at it, right? Yeah, I'm sure you guys had a chuckle about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I see that Larry has put up his hand. Larry, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Dusko. My late father, in a fit of organization, did pre-arrangements for all of the family members 20 odd years ago. I have the documents and so on. They look just fine. My question is, what happens if the funeral direction, if the company is no longer in existence?
Gone. So generally speaking, the any pre-arrangements have to be held in trust. If you are a privately owned funeral home, you have to create a trust in the bank, and then that money is protected, if you will, right? Because that legislation actually changed about 30-ish years ago. Because a funeral, if you were a single funeral home owner, family owned, you're getting all that stuff, and things happen. You go bankrupt, you embezzle money. There's a whole bunch of things that can happen, right? And then the family loses that. So that changed. You can put it, if you're privately owned, you go to a private trust in a bank. Because we're a big corporation, we use an insurance company. The law mandates us to use an insurance company, who then holds the money until the person passes, and then we get it released.
No, so I need to follow up and find out where that trust
No.
is.
No, you don't. I would recommend, just because that was done a long time ago, I would recommend that you get in touch with the funeral home that did that, and just double check if you have everything.
Sure.
Unfortunately, the legislation was different back then, and we were not required to put all the necessary items line by line on that contract.
I see.
Right? And then some funeral homes have a different practice, like, your dad might have purchased plots for everybody, and cremations, for example, and not telling you that you have absolutely everything, and then you can come to the funeral home and say, okay, well, now we need a funeral service, we need this, so you could have items missing in there. Yeah, I can take a look at those files and help you out, so you don't have to go to the funeral home per se, but
I would probably, in the first instance, go to the funeral home that the contract is with, but thank you.
yeah.
Thank you for that.
Thanks,
Um,
Larry. I see that Eric has his hand up, but first let's go to Joan's question that she wrote in the chat room. Her question was, does a green funeral include no embalming?
Yep. Thank you for that question. I was hoping somebody's gonna mention that. So green burial cannot have embalming. That's correct. Green burial can also not have any like say the you have to be buried in something like a casket of some sort. That casket cannot have any it has to be done without nails, screws, no colors, no lacquer, none of that stuff is allowed, right? So you kind of have to be really cautious about that, and that's what I mentioned, that it's so far very limited because the casket manufacturers are not catching up with that yet. There is only one casket that's green burial approved. And then the other options that you have would be like a wicker basket. They can be very ornate and things like that, but it's still just a wicker basket. So it depends on how the family wants to go. But those would be the rules, right? Thanks, Joanne, for that question.
Eric, please go ahead.
Okay, listen, I thank you so much. It's very, very informative. The planning guide, if you have that electronically, I would be more than happy to send that out to everybody who is attended today. So if you could just, I'll send you an email after today's session. You could send me the link for it, and then I can distribute it later if that's. And just by a show of hands, does everybody want a copy of it? If anybody won't be offended if I send it to you, hopefully. So thank you so much.
Few people in the chat actually indicated that they would like that. Joanne, Jenna and Kirsten, Grant.
So I'll just send it to everybody. As I say, I just wanted to make sure that nobody would be offended if they got a copy of it. But I think it's something that we all should have. Certainly, it's always one of those things. I think I have everything I need, and then when you go through and do a checklist, you find out that you've only got half of the things that you need done.
Well, it is very unfortunate, especially if a person is dealing with cemeteries, right? Because they will come and they'll sell you a plot, which is important because obviously you can't get buried or interned without that. But they sometimes like to give you an impression that everything is taken care of. And the thinking is not necessarily the greatest or the most ethical, because the thinking is, okay, so Dusko's family has a plot with I don't know, St. Michael Cemetery, and they don't do pre-planning. That's why I chose them. The chances are the family is going to come and talk to us when Dusko passes, right? So they don't tell you that you're going to need a casket, that you're going to need some sort of a funeral. Like there is labor involved. The funeral home needs to do a bunch of paperwork, and there's lots of stuff that's not there. Does Dignity Memorial deal with the wills of the deceased? We do not help people write wills. I just so happens that I am a commissioner of oath, so I can verify and nostrify a lot of documents. I help people with land titles. We don't charge for that, but wills are not something that we do. I do have a lady that kind of shares the same philosophy about life with me, and she's an attorney, and she helps people create wills and power of attorneys and things like that. So I can share that information with the moderators here.
Please.
And there's another message here from, is it Alvin? Hi, Alvin. You don't necessarily need a permit per se. When the urn is released to the family, you will get a certificate of cremation and you will get a burial permit. Those two pieces of documentation are enough, simply for a reason like, you know, if you get stopped by an RCMP for speeding, if they see an urn in the back, they might want to know that it was done legitimately and not in a barn fire in your backyard. So that's kind of one of the big reasons for that. You do need, if an urn is going to go in your luggage, in your suitcase, you don't really need a permit. If you are going through the like a carry-on, then the folks at the airport might get a little bit antsy and they want to see a letter from a funeral home saying that this is legit. We verified that these are only remains of Dusko, not anything else. But other than that, not really.
Dusko, I have a question about formal government records, and if you're scattered at the sea, for example, is there a record of your death, of your life somehow?
Every death has to be registered with Stats Canada. Not necessarily the method of disposition, right? So if you're buried at the cemetery, and by buried, I mean urns can be buried as well, right? The cremated remains. In those cases, the cemeteries will have the documentation and then they will register with the government on their behalf. But if you're scattered, unfortunately, no. There's no requirements for that. Like, and actually, very interesting law actually changed during COVID. My wife passed 6 years ago. I had no idea that you were not supposed to scatter her ashes in a national park. Me and the kids went to Jasper, and that's where she's resting. We have a little thing there for her. Now it's allowed. Now you can actually do that. So.
Yeah. I see Larry has his hand up. Go ahead, Larry.
Your mention of COVID brings to mind the earlier pandemic of HIV, and I would be less than honest if I said the funeral homes were helpful in that circumstance. They indeed, I can understand some of the issues, but some of the issues seem purely to be obstructive. So yeah. Without trying to go back into that old history, my question really is, for a group such as us here, can we be assured from most funeral homes of equitable treatment, of respect for our gender identity, sexual orientation, whatever?
Larry, thank you so much for that question. I am a very open-minded individual myself, and I can only sympathize greatly with the struggles you guys experienced in the past. God bless you for that. Whether you believe in it or not, it's irrelevant, right? Our company, Dignity Memorial, is extremely appreciative of all aspects of LGBTQ community. So there is no discrimination. We openly have LGBTQ groups within our employees that share their experiences with us. So definitely there will not be any issues of any kind as far as that's concerned. Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Eric.
Yes, just a question. I mean, because I'm so old, I remember when I was young, every funeral was a set process and occurred shortly after death and so on. And in the last few years, even at an accelerating rate, I've noticed more of the celebration of life, the memorial service, and they seem to be, I mean, the personal tragedy of the family is still there, but the the memorial services and the celebrations of life seem to be more of a healing process. Is that something that, is that the reason that
It's-
they're becoming more popular, or is there other reasons?
Well, the generations are changing, right? My mom's generation, she is still alive and she's 83. They cannot fathom cremations. You have to be in a casket. You have to wear a black clothing for a year, a minimum, after a person, that kind of stuff. Those things are changing because my mom's generation and people of that age are slowly passing, right? So people like myself, when my wife died, I actually gave heck to my brother-in-law who came out there, and he was doing this sad eulogy, and everybody was sad and sad and sad. And my wife wasn't that, right? She specifically chose him because he's a comedian. So I stopped the service and I went to help him out. We started telling jokes about our life and stuff. So that's how things should be. Like I'm not knocking anybody's beliefs down, right? I'm just saying that I don't want to wear dark clothing just because, like, I mourn my wife in my way. I don't need some silly custom from, like, my mom wore black for 5 years after my dad passed. It was like so depressing, right? Like, there's no need for that.
I think you're right. It's to celebrate the memory, and then, but also to recognize that we're still living and we still have to have move on with our lives.
Exactly.
That's why, for me, I greatly prefer the celebration of life than the old-fashioned formal funeral.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that, and we strive to provide like the best possible experience for the family based on your wishes, right? So anything goes, and by anything I really mean anything. There's no restrictions. I see Joanne has a question about absolute cheapest procedure one can plan for their demise. Okay, so I kind of touched on that a little bit when I was doing the comparisons. It is very hard to put a number without actually having a one-on-one consultation, because absolute cheapest to you, Joanne, might not be absolute cheapest to me. Like, right? That's why we do these personal consultations. There are companies out there that you cannot pre-plan with them. That's how they're set up. It's called, one of the companies is called Cremation Direct. There's no pre-planning, so you have to contact them after a person passes, and they charge $890 for a cremation. So that would be the absolute cheapest bottom line that you can actually get out there, that we know it's kind of decent and not, with Dignity Memorial here in Edmonton, our cheapest no cremation, no service option would be around $2,600. The difference in price is simply because we are a full-fledged funeral home, with expenses being the way they are. Everybody has their own business model, right? The cremation director I mentioned to you, it's not a funeral home. They have like a one little office in a strip mall, and they will arrange everything that you need to do, but they don't have a lot of overhead that they need to worry about. And because they're offering such a low price, they do not do pre-planning. So you just kind of have to wait. And what the price is going to be in 5 years or 10 years or however, that's anybody's guess, right? Hopefully that answers John's question.
Dusko, I'm curious how Edmonton in Canada compares to the rest of the world. Canada has lots of land, lots of a place to bury. Take a country like Japan, which has, many more people and very little land. Like where do we fit in the world view?
It's really personally, to me, it's fascinating that here you have to have, like, I don't know, let's say I have 6 members of the family. my wife, my kids, my parents, that kind of stuff. Everybody has to purchase their own plot, right? Back home in Croatia, in my family crypt, we have 6 generations of my family all in the same place. Different procedure, different rules, different everything, right? It's really hard to say. Like, it's obviously that is done for somebody has some reasoning behind that. Maybe the abundance of land is that, right? I think that we don't definitely have to worry about the burial spaces here. Yeah. You mentioned Japan. That I know about Paris, France. Like, they're struggling big time, and the bigger the city is, the harder it is to find that kind of stuff. So they're coming up with different ideas. Like you can only have that plot for 90 years. After that is resold. Cemeteries will remove the remains, whatever it's left after 90 years from that place. Here is different. Like, I mentioned the burial vaults that are guaranteed for 100 years. They're not. So after 100 years, they're going to open that vault and you're still in there. Nothing happened. Right? So we're dealing with things differently, right?
Thank you. Does anyone else have any comments or questions? Karen, go ahead.
I have a generic question. It's more or less, I know some of the answers, but I don't know if other people are as curious, perhaps. When a person dies, of course, we're gone, we're out of it. What happens to the body? Who comes? Who picks it up? Who knows where to take the body? Who has to certify? Who has to declare the person dead, et cetera, et cetera? What are the legal issues that we don't care about because now we're dead, and it's your problem, not mine?
Okay, so you basically have two avenues of how things happen. And again, I'm going to use my personal example because it's fresh. And if a person is dying at home, which was the case with my wife, there is a well-documented history of illness. We knew that she's going to pass. The palliative care people signed off on the documents. I did not have to call the ambulance or the RCMP to say, my wife is gone, what do I do, right? If I go home today and I pass at home, not chances are, but my kids will have to call the ME because the cause of death is unexplained. What if somebody poisoned me? Maybe kids want to know what happened. Dad's heart was so big he finally exploded, type of thing, right? If a person is, I'm glad I'm making you guys smile a little bit. That's good. If a person is in a long-term care facility or hospital or hospice or any of those facilities, then the conversation is going to be done with the family. Say, have you talked with the funeral home? It looks like mom, dad, so on, is not going to make it for much longer. Do you have arrangements? If that happens, you're going to let them know. Say it's memories, it's Park Memorial, it's Colin McKinley, whoever you choose. Hospital and that facility would contact us, and then we will contact the family to get permission from the family to go and pick up the deceased person. After the person is in our care, we follow very strict rules and procedures as far as the storage of the person, if you will, documentation. We do all the registration with the government as far as the vital stats are concerned. We register the passing, or everything is done by the funeral home. And the procedure is extremely, extremely stringent, like especially with us because of the size of the company. Every time somebody touches the deceased person, there is a record being made, so that at any point in time somebody can come and say, okay, Dusko was there on Tuesday, May 4th. why were you doing? Where's the rest of the jewelry? Where's, things can happen. So we have strict documentation about that. And I'm sure somebody is curious, how many bodies can you cremate at the same time? Only one. Only one. No. Again, the procedure is very strict. We have to spend a lot of time and effort to actually make sure that the retort is 100% cleaned of the person's ashes before we put another body in. DNA is destroyed, and that's really not an issue, but we just want to make sure that a family is going to receive 100% of their loved one, not 99.9.
Mhm.
So
And what about implants and pacemakers and all that stuff?
any metal stuff like artificial hips, things like that, they are they're not removed because they're going to be as a how can I say, they'll remain after the cremation happens. We have to take out all the pacemakers and things that have batteries in them, and we do that ourselves, simply because there is a little boom in the retort. Yeah, and we strongly encourage families, please do not leave any popcorn in the cremation container. Not a cool thing.
I think we have time for one last question. Larry, please go ahead.
It actually isn't a question, it's a comment. I practiced pathology for 35 years, and people need to know that there are two sorts of autopsies. The autopsies requested for medical reasons, and for those the family must give consent. But there are also official autopsies, which are the circumstances that Dusko mentioned, where the cause of death is not clear, where the medical examiner feels that he or she can't certify the death without an autopsy. Though those autopsies, official autopsies, medical examiner's office, happen on their decision, and the family does not have they cannot give an authorization. They are ultimately given the information. Of course, any deaths where criminality is concerned fall clearly into that category.
Thank you for the expert analysis of that. That's awesome.
So I'm going to give the final word to Dusko. If you have any final words for us, any events to advertise, anything before we close off today?
Thank you for reminding me about that. We are very proud to support the St. Albert Oldies but Goldies Automobile Association, and they do a little what do they call the Rock in August, that we do kind of barbecue. We do a breakfast here for everybody. That's where the event kicks off, and then they old timers with cars, they go all over the city of St. Albert and Edmonton, and they have a bunch of different events. So yeah, I'll send you an invitation for that. You can share that with your members. We'll be happy to see you guys here for sure. Other than that, we didn't really talk about the nitty-gritty stuff and all that, and it's impossible because we have 10 or 12 people here that I can't do a personal consultation with everybody. If somebody wants to get in touch with me and actually have that one-on-one consultation, so we can put a little plan for you together, at least you will know what the actual cost of that is. There's no pressure, no need to purchase anything. I just want to make sure that everybody knows what to expect. Okay.
Well, thank you for that offer. And I look forward to getting that planning guide, just to see if there really are 88 questions in there. And I must compliment you on your humor. It's, I think it's really helpful in your profession. You made me laugh quite a few times today.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You can contact us at agingwithpride, YEG@gmail.com. See you all next week.
Thanks,
Bye.
Aging with Pride. You guys are awesome.